This is Molly, here with your recap and review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 8, Labyrinths. The episode opens on the Breen dreadnought. Locke's body is laid out before the crew, with Moll at his side. Moll whispers to Locke, "I promise to fix this." Locke's uncle is determined to use Locke's death to rally the other Breen factions behind him and go to war with the Federation. Moll shouts that she can bring back Locke, and she explains to the Breen about the progenitor's technology. She turns to the Primarch, holds up her cuffed wrists, and asks to be set free so she can assist in the noble quest to restore the Scion. Rune looks around and sees everyone staring at him. He says, "Of course I want nothing more than to see our Scion returned." Moll's cuffs are removed, and Rune whispers in Moll's ear that if she speaks directly to his soldiers again, he will eviscerate her in front of them. Moll tells him she doesn't think the Scion would look kindly upon that. Rune tells Moll that her value does not extend beyond her ability to acquire the progenitor's tech, and for her sake, they'd better succeed. Meanwhile, the Discovery has arrived at the Badlands, which is the largest plasma storm in the quadrant. They talk to Harel, one of the sworn order who tend to the Eternal Gallery and Archive, and call it home. This creature was annoying, like one of those people who can say the worst things to your face, but they never break their smile. Raynor even asks if what she said was supposed to be a joke. Harel gives Discovery the coordinates to reach the library. They navigate the bumpy path through the plasma storm, while being forced to listen to Harel give her orientation speech for the library. The Discovery gets tossed around. Unfortunately, it does not explode, so this horrible show continues. Discovery arrives at the library. Harel tells them her scans indicate that there is a Quajan on board. The library has something from Quajan and requests that Book gives them context for the item. Michael Burnham has Book meet her in her ready room. She tells him that the archive has something from Quajan. Of course, Book wants to see it. Things are awkward. Book wants to apologize. He gets why Moll had to be sent away. Michael Burnham says she stands by the decision. Then she tells Book she cares about him and what's important to him. Then she says, "Okay, let's go." They go over to the massive library, which the old man and I will discuss a lot more in the review. Michael Burnham tells Harel about the Breen probably being on their way. Harel's not worried because the Breen are contributing members of the archive, and they have experience dealing with cultures in conflict. Harel has set up viewing rooms for Michael Burnham and Book. Michael Burnham is presented with the Labyrinths of the Mind manuscript. She asks if anyone else has ever come looking for it, and Harel tells her she's the first. Harel leaves Michael Burnham and takes Book to his viewing room. Michael Burnham flips through the book and discovers a flat, rectangular piece of metal tucked between two of the pages. She places her finger on the square in the center, and the rectangle activates. Book is shown to his room and finds the archive is in possession of a cutting from the Quajan world route. This was actually a fairly moving scene that was well acted by the man who plays Book. Harel tells Book that he can take the route with him if he would like. Book goes to tell Michael Burnham what the library had for him, only to find Michael Burnham out cold on the floor. The Betazoid neuroscientist's clue has sent Michael Burnham on a trip inside her own mind. Her mind has manifested the most important place to Michael Burnham as the library, and the guide manifested by her mind takes the form of Book. Michael Burnham figures out this is a test. If she doesn't pass, she dies. Meanwhile, Dr. Culber and Commander Raynor have come to the library. Dr. Culber's being there is obvious. But Raynor's being there is dumb, because now Discovery is under the command of Lieutenant Commander Reese, while we're all waiting for the Breen to show up. Dr. Culber says that the thing in the book that Michael Burnham touched looks like a nucleonic emitter. It's connected to her frontal lobe and appears to be running a program in her mind. He can't safely stop it, nor can they safely transport her. She's just going to have to lie there on the floor until the program has run its course. In her mind, Michael Burnham has to figure out the clue. She starts by looking for the history section to read up on the Dominion War, thinking the clue would be there. It's not. She realizes that the library is a labyrinth, so she takes a bucket of sand in order to map her way, which didn't make any sense to me because this labyrinth is huge. She finally reaches what she thinks is the door, only to discover herself back where she started. The Breen have arrived at the beacon at the edge of the Badlands. The Primarch is a jerk to Harel. She tells him to rephrase his request, and he threatens to turn the library to ash. Hyrel tells Rune his request is denied, and all Breen privileges are suspended until further notice, and may he gain knowledge elsewhere. The Breen traced the signal, and they're going to follow it through the plasma to the library. Moll states that Locke told her the Breen have great reverence for their culture and history, and says to Rune, "Not you, though, He asks her how the clue will lead them to the progenitor's tech, and Moll tells him that it has to be combined with the other clues that Discovery has. He's angry because she hadn't mentioned other clues, but Moll assures him that Discovery is there somewhere, and it will be easy to get the clues from them. Rune grabs Moll by the throat and demands to know if there's anything else as he's choking her to the floor. Rune's soldiers watch as Moll groans and shakes her head no. Michael Burnham realizes that the lights are getting dim. With the Breen on their way, the library has raised shields, making it impossible for Raynor to get back to Discovery. Raynor tells Reese to conceal the ship, so Reese orders Discovery into the plasma storm, so the Breen are unable to use their sensors to find them. The book Manifestation makes an excellent point about not knowing if Michael Burnham was one of the good guys or one of the bad guys, and how could they know that Michael Burnham, out of anyone alive, could be trusted with the progenitor's tech. He tells Michael Burnham she hasn't passed the test yet, and more of the lights in the labyrinth go out. Michael Burnham realizes that she's running out of time. The Breen have arrived and are using shield tunneling technology. Raynor tells Discovery to figure out how to stop it. Michael Burnham is pacing, trying to figure out the test. It occurs to her that it's her mind, and the test is about her. Her subconscious picked book because they talked earlier and they didn't fix it. Her subconscious picked book because she wants to fix it and doesn't know how. She sees the look on manifested Book's face and says he looked at her like that too. She says Book thinks the job is all that matters to her. She asks manifested Book if she's supposed to admit that the job is everything. She then says to herself, or maybe she should go even more psychobabble and admit that if she doesn't complete the mission, then she doesn't know who she is. Maybe she thinks that nobody will love her or care about her if she's a failure. Maybe that's the reason why she lost Book. And you'd think I was making up that line, but no, that's what she actually said. She asks the Book Manifestation if that's right, and he tells her some of those things may be true, but they're not the answer, and more of the lights go out. Then Michael Burnham starts to get a little angry. She states that she succeeds and fixes things. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with having a purpose? She tells the Book Manifestation that he doesn't have to go out every day and prove himself why he matters. He doesn't have to prove that he deserves his uniform and rank, that he can be counted on, that he won't quit, that he won't fail again. The Book Manifestation says, "Again?" And Michael Burnham stops, looks directly at him and says, "Yes. I disobeyed orders, which led to a war that killed a lot of people, and I wake up every day having to think about all the lives I was responsible for ending, all the damage I did to those who were left behind. I only did 6 months in prison for it, and I think every day that I don't deserve to wear this uniform, because I don't feel like I've made amends for what I've done. Because how could anyone ever make up for that? And I worry with every command I give that I might be letting my emotions overwhelm good judgment, and that I'll end up doing it all over again." Just kidding. What she really said, and I quote, was, "Screw you, I'll find my own way out." Discovery figures out the Breen tunneling technology has a periodic fluctuation, and that they're using harmonic resonance to match the archive's shield frequency. They can trick the Breen system into thinking the frequency has changed and shut the thing down, at least until the Breen figure out what's going on. They do it, but a few Breen soldiers have already gotten inside the library. Book and Raynor manage to take out a bunch of the Breen. Book gets shot in the process, but he'll live. Raynor says some things over the telecom to the Breen that YouTube won't allow if we want to be ad eligible. Moll is watching and tells Rune to send her because she's beaten the Federation in close quarters before. Moll tells Rune he doesn't have to keep losing soldiers, but he says he'll sacrifice as many as it takes. Moll whispers to the Breen next to her that Rune doesn't give a about Locke or any of them. Michael Burnham tells fake Book that she's sorry and needed a minute. He tells her that her time is almost up. She knows, and she's tried everything. There's nothing else she can do, and she doesn't want to die in there. Fake Book then asks her if she's afraid of death. Michael Burnham says, "Not really. She's afraid a lot, but not of death." Fake Book is surprised by this. The great Michael Burnham, afraid? She replies, "More than I'd like to admit. Of failing, not being enough, a good enough captain, friend, partner. Sometimes it drives her, that fear, and she hates it so much. It makes her feel small and weak and ashamed." Fake Book says, "It sounds hard to live like that." And a sniffling Michael Burnham says, "She's been working on it, but it's always there." She says it feels good to say it out loud, even if he isn't really Book. And she should have told him that. But she pulled back because she was afraid she'd failed him, or herself, so it was easier to just... And she trails off and sighs, and asks Fake Book if he can tell her what the test was before the lights go out. He says no need, because she passed, and the lights go back on. Apparently the answer to the test was knowing herself, and being able to be honest with herself, especially with the things that are hard to look at. Fear, guilt, the things she may be vulnerable to. Most can't admit those things to themselves. She can, and that's the only way she can be trusted to do the right thing with so much power. Congratulations, Michael Burnham. Thank you. She says, "That's one hell of a test. Damn, you don't mess around, do you?" He tells her there's a crystal in viewing room 7, and the clue is inside. Luckily, in the last 1,000 years, no one has moved it. He also tells her there's something else she needs to know about the final destination, which he tells her off-screen. It's the way to get through the final destination. Michael Burnham wakes up, and Rayner tells her that the Breen are there, and more are coming. They go and get the clue and beam out just as the Breen fire on them. Back on ship, Michael Burnham is going to use the Discovery to draw the Breen away from the library. She hails the Breen and tells them she has the clue, and to leave the library alone. Rune says to send the clues to him, or he'll destroy the library. The Breen fire on the library, and Hyrel reports significant injuries. Rune demands the clues, or he'll fire on the library again. Michael Burnham asks for him to swear a Turgoon, a sacred Breen oath, to spare the archive and all its inhabitants. Conveniently, Rune needs a moment to consider. While they're waiting, Tilly assembles the clues and gets the location for the progenitor's tech. Moll says, "Why would she do this?" And Rune tells her the Federation's weakness has always been compassion. To save the few, they will risk the many. Rune tells Michael Burnham that he agrees to the Tigroon. Tigroon? Whatever. He agrees to the sacred oath. Discovery transports the clue to the Breen. Michael Burnham tells the Discovery crew to prepare to vent the main shuttle bay and all plasma from both nacelles. The Breen have the map. Rune tells his crew to lock onto Discovery and prepare to fire. Moll says, "What? No!" And the Breen soldiers all look at her, and she says, "You'd be starting a war with the Federation. All the Breen factions would be drawn in, and they could turn against us." Rune says, "Us? So you're a Breen now?" Moll replies that she is the wife of the Scion. Rune corrects her, the dead Scion. Discovery is preparing to vent and jump simultaneously, and Michael Burnham calls for a black alert. The Breen fire on them, and they sustain damage. They vent and jump, landing 22 light years away from their destination. They can't jump again until they make repairs, and the warp drive is also damaged. At max warp, the Breen will get to the progenitor's tech in 6 hours. Michael Burnham tells the crew they have 5 hours to fix the Discovery. Rayner tells Michael Burnham she made a smart move because now Rune thinks they're dead. Michael Burnham tells him someone once told her to never turn her back on a Breen. Rayner states that the Breen may still beat them to the coordinates, and Michael Burnham tells him she learned something in the mindscape that they'll need to know when they get there, and she can't imagine Rune figuring it out. Rayner replies, "What about Moll?" And Michael Burnham says nothing. The Breen believe Discovery was destroyed. Moll seems upset by this development. Rune then says, "Prepare to fire on the archive." Moll and the rest of the Breen all look at each other. Moll tells Rune that he swore a Tigroon. Turgorn? He swore a freaking oath. And that he shouldn't make this any worse for his crew than he already has. He should set a course for the map coordinates, and that their goal is lock. Rune says the goal is whatever he says it is, and orders the weapons to be recharged. The Primarch orders Moll to be taken to the chamber, whatever the hell that is. The soldier tries to argue, and Rune shoots and kills him. Moll tells Rune if he destroys the archive, it won't just be the Federation coming after them. It'll be other Breen too, as revenge for his dishonor. Rune says with the progenitor's power, he won't worry. Moll tells him, but you don't have it yet, and Locke will never support Rune's succession if Rune kills her. Rune says he doesn't need Locke anymore, or her. Moll says you don't give a damn about your scion, your oaths, or the lives of your soldiers. She asks the soldiers, would Locke do this? Would your scion be this selfish? Rune points out that Locke left for a human. Moll states he loves me, but he left because of you. Rune is about to shoot Moll, but the soldier closest to Moll raises his weapon first and tells Rune not to do it. Rune shouts, how dare you? And when he goes for his soldier, Moll kicks him in the shin, and as he falls backward, she grabs his weapon, fires twice, and kills him. A bunch of Breen soldiers point their weapons at Moll. She tells them she is the wife of Locke, scion and true ruler of the Imperium. They will get him back. Long will he reign. The Breen soldiers respond, long will he reign. The end. Why don't we start with you, old man? I'm sure you have got a lot to say about this, so go for it.
Do we want to start with the little stuff or the stuff that annoyed me big time here, including thievery?
Why don't we start with the little stuff, and then we'll move to the big stuff.
Why do they have to talk with this modern day coastal dialect? And by coastal, I'm talking like U.S. West Coast dialect.
That's an excellent question, because I have found it difficult just to read the lines that they have written, because I'll write them down word for word and then try to read them, and it is staggeringly difficult to read such choppy, short sentences. I don't know. It's awful. Really awful.
Because that librarian, I was sitting with Molly watching this episode, and as the librarian was talking, I was making a joke, because it's not quite as bad as the joke here. But if anybody remembers Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, Hercules had his sister, Aphrodite, and the way they portrayed the sister was kind of like a Valley Girl type person, and it was a humorous take on it. And this was similar to that. It wasn't quite that level of Valley Girl, oh my god, but it was close to that. I'm assuming that people here aren't speaking English for the most part. I assume the universal translator is working here. So a lot of what they use, the slang, the profanity, I don't understand why they're talking like that. That's some of the reason, like in TNG, the reason that the language is kind of more formalized. I just assumed that that was done so that it would try to compensate for keeping slang out of the dialect of when they're talking to people. Like the universal translator wouldn't know how to deal with that, because anybody who's tried to take multiple languages, and there's a lot of phrases that do not translate cleanly to another language. And that's with the human brain trying to make the translation. A lot of the slang in a language is steeped in culture. So when you try to make a mapping to a different language, it doesn't quite work. You can just give an approximation. And speaking of which, so the joke that was being made here, and I assume, again, that the universal translator was kicking in, but maybe the librarian was speaking English. But first of all, book is called book because it's short for Booker. So there was a joke here where the librarian was saying something like, oh, your name is Book, right? It's kind of odd that a book would come visit us. Normally people come here to see the books, or it was something like that. And I'm thinking, book, Booker, if this is universal translated, like that word probably doesn't even mean the same thing. It's a nitpick, but I just kind of shrug my shoulders at that. And then you have like Michael Burnham saying phrases like screw you, and there was the crap word, but it was the SH one. Again, I'm trying to clean this up for our monetization on YouTube.
Oh, and Rayner said a-holes, but he didn't say a-holes, he said...
All of this is just showing how this is not Star Trek. This is some, I don't know, Fight Club version of Star Trek or underground version of Star Trek, because it's got street lingo in it, and I use that in quotation marks. that took me right out of the episode when this stuff was going on.
There were a lot of swears in this episode, way more than usual. The only thing they didn't do was drop the F-bomb.
That's next week.
Probably.
I do agree with you that the scene when Book got that, was it a box that had the root in there of the remaining tree? Or,
the world tree, yeah.
That was a nice scene. That was probably that was the best scene of the episode. Probably the best scene of this season.
It was extremely well acted. I don't know the actor's name that plays Book, but he did an excellent job with that.
Because that's the only positive I can give this episode is that one little scene. Again, this is nitpicky, but why does this library have books, oodles of books, other than visually it looked nice? Because Molly and I were talking because we visited a library that had archives. Usually the library is refrigerated, and if you are going to look at any of the books, you either have to wear gloves or use these special devices to turn the pages because they don't want to ruin the material. I could see a section of this library being sectioned off for like museum-like pieces of books you just wanted to have the original. But the majority of this library should be all in their computer system. There's no reason to have shelves and shelves and shelves of books. It's like they were trying to, I don't know, have a mix between like Harry Potter and like the Clone Wars animation. They had that...
the Jedi Library.
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought of. There's nothing here that was necessarily directly ripped off up until later in this video. I'm going to talk about what they did rip off, because they did. It's almost like we have to play the game every week. Who they rip off this week. But this episode had all sorts of absurdity in it. It had the Breen. They're supposed to be this warrior-like race. And so when Moll is saying, "Send me, I've succeeded in close quarter battle with the Federation before." And I'm thinking, you think you can do better than people who probably grew up all their life learning how to fight.
Well, she knows that Book won't shoot her.
But that's not what she was saying. Like,
I know.
She was saying basically she's got super karate and she can fight better than any Breen, this 90-pound person. And then when she used her super karate to take care of business at the end...
Oh, yeah, that was really easy to get rid of Rune. Why didn't one of his soldiers think about doing that a long time ago? Hell, why didn't Locke do that? He had the opportunity to take out his uncle when they first left. That was so dumb. He knew his uncle was bad news, and that he was being used by his uncle so his uncle could, well, gain power. I'm just gonna say this. In a Game of Thrones situation like that, Locke knows what the stakes are. That was just ridiculous that he left his uncle alive in the first place. So many of these characters are behaving in such stupid manners, and it's just so that they can move their dumb plot along instead of writing well thought out, intelligent characters. They write these idiots so that they can create these different situations with the stupid drama that they want to have to try to force you to feel something. It's garbage. Real garbage writing.
I do not have a lot of positive to say about this episode. I do think the role, what is his name is Reese, when he was put in command of the Discovery while Rayner and Burnham were at the library, that's like the most lines this character has had ever. And I thought he did a pretty good job for what lines he was given.
I think you're right. I think he actually is Commander Reese at this point. But this season is the first we've ever seen this guy. If he was in one of the previous seasons, I don't remember him at all.
Isn't everybody on the bridge but Tilly a commander? Because I don't know. Again, that's a nitpick, but it just seems like it's, hey, Commander blah, okay, Commander blah blah, and everybody's a commander. Well, don't you need some underlings to do stuff if everybody's a commander?
Yeah, and you've got this dangerous situation with the Breen on their tail, and Rayner goes and transports over to the library. So both the captain and first officer are both over there. And they're leaving the ship in Reese's hands. He proved to be capable, but we've never really seen this guy before this season.
Then Rayner should have stayed behind. he had tactics against the Breen, so wouldn't you want that expertise on the Discovery to help defend against a very overwhelming force, but still he might have some tricks up his sleeve. It made no sense for both of them to go on this mission.
Why didn't they just go to the library, check out the book,
and bring it back?
Leave, jump from right by the library so that unless the Breen go right up to the library, they can't use their sensors to figure out where the hell they've gone. Why didn't they do that? Go get the book and get the hell out of there.
Because Michael Burnham's library card has been revoked.
Well, with good reason, apparently.
Apparently, when you commit a partial genocide, they revoke your library card, so that's why she doesn't have one anymore. Is there anything else before I get into what I really want to get into?
All right, I've got 3 things I want to say. Number 1, Book getting that root is heading straight down the path that I predicted several episodes ago, as far as he's going to get the opportunity to use that progenitor's tech to basically regrow his planet. And the world root that he now has is another piece in heading in that direction. So I think we are getting the setup that I predicted, that Moll is going to need the tech to revive Locke, and Book is going to get the opportunity to bring his planet back. And whether or not that comes into conflict with Michael Burnham, that remains to be seen. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's forced to choose between the two, his planet and Michael Burnham. It'll be interesting to see what they decide for him to choose, to be honest. I know I'd pick my planet, but that's just me. Next thing I want to say is they were doing their darndest to rehabilitate Moll in this episode. They tried to make her seem genuinely disturbed by Rune destroying Discovery, trying to destroy the library, how she was surprised that Michael Burnham would turn over the clues in order to save the library. They're trying really hard to make her a good character. But what they've already done with her, that cold-blooded murder that she committed a few episodes back, I don't understand how they think that they can just have her do that. And now, oh, well, she's surprised about the compassion of the Federation, and she doesn't want to kill all these innocent people, so apparently she's now a good guy? Again, that's sloppy writing.
Well, that follows. Look at Michael Burnham.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to bring up. How'd you like what I thought she should have said instead of what she actually did say?
Yep. And what she did say was what a narcissist would say. Because her answer was, I'm not the bestest enough, and I feel I'll let everybody down if I'm not the bestest of the best. The great Michael Burnham needs to be great is her biggest fear. And then she brought up fear, too. And I'm scratching my head because you know, dear listener, that I have not accepted Michael Burnham as this captain because she's never taken true responsibility for what she did. Now, there was a brief thing here where, as Michael Burnham was talking to Fake Book, the topic came up like, I don't want to let them down again. And then Fake Book's like, again? And I think that was referring to season 1's crap that we have loads of problems with, but they never actually said anything after that.
No, again, don't go filling that stuff in with your own headcanon, because she didn't actually state that that's what she was sorry for. Because her immediate response was, screw you. And then when she did come back, it was all about her and how she feels insecure and how she's afraid all the time. And she should have told that to Book.
Even if you assume that was the case, that she was referring to what happened in season 1, the mutiny and the disobeying orders and killing the torchbearer, all she was talking about was letting people down. She wasn't saying she was sorry for anything. She just, I let him down again.
And again, that comes right back to her self-worth being reflected at her by what other people think of her. That was just really gross.
This was the next episode after the one that we had that scene at the very end last week, where we spent a great deal of our video talking about how that Michael Burnham laughing off or giggling off or sighing off, I mean, it depends on how you want to interpret what she did.
She laughed.
The whole mutiny thing. And so when this whole discussion happened in this episode, I actually thought we were going to get a follow-up with that, and I was going to go, oh my gosh, they set us up, they faked this out last week, and they didn't go ahead and give us what we wanted. But this week, they were finally going to give us it. Lucy, Charlie Brown, and the football again.
And you fell for it.
Lucy said she was going to hold the football, and she said she wasn't going to pull it away, but she had her fingers crossed again. And right before the football was kicked, she yanked it away. Because Michael Burnham's answer and talking about fear for so long, if you remember at the end of season 1 when she gave that ridiculous speech in front of everybody and talking about fear and, oh, this is who Starfleet is. Part of that speech was, we gave into fear, I gave into fear. She still got that fear. She admitted it in this exchange. So going back to the intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture and everything I've said about Michael Burnham not growing or learning a darn thing, this proved it yet again. And then she was getting lippy with this fake book about, well, you don't have to sit there and prove every day that you deserve to be in the uniform and you deserve this. Michael, you don't deserve to be in the uniform. That's your own projection coming out because you do not deserve to be in that uniform. You have not taken responsibility for anything that matters when it came to the horrible stuff that you did. So this was nothing but a narcissist answer. It was bad enough that this exchange had to happen. Is it all right if I go into my big, what did they steal this week, or do we have something else to say here?
Nope, go right ahead.
So I want to preface the library stuff that was setting up. I could make an argument that there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When she went into her mindscape, you could say, well, there's a little inner light there. But it's just a little bit. That could just all be common tropey, or that could all be just mix and match stuff.
Yeah, because I couldn't tell you how many soap operas I've watched where somebody was in a coma and they had to figure out how to get out of where they were locked into. Usually some sort of dreamscape labyrinth kind of thing. So again, this was common.
But what is not common was what was happening when Michael Burnham was in that mindscape. And she had that book manifestation, and she was having this exchange with him. Where did they steal from this week? Babylon 5. They stole this scene when Fake Book and her were talking about her fear and all that from Season 4, Episode 2 of Babylon 5, Whatever Happened to Mr. Garibaldi. In Babylon 5, I don't want to spoil too much, so I'm going to keep it as generic as I can. It's a spoiler if I give it to you. But John Sheridan was in this place that wasn't really real. And he was with this educated mentor character. And they were having a discussion about life and death and what one needs to do to move beyond that. And they were in this cave system. And there was part of this where Sheridan was still trying to get out of this place. So he was walking around the cave, and then he came around to where they began, where this campfire was to begin with. And he said something like, this is the campfire where this all started. We've come full circle. And the entity that he was with said, don't we all come full circle? Or it was something very similar. And then there was an exchange a little bit later about Sheridan not being able to let go of trying to be there for everybody because he was scared to die, not because of dying. He was scared to die because people needed him. He didn't want to let them down. And the solution he needed to do to get out of this place was to let go of that need to be there for other people and for him to just be, to have a reason to live. And in this case, his reason to live was Delenn.
The woman he was in love with.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you map Book into that, you Fake Book, you turn him into this mentor character that was in that cave. And the last 10 minutes of Babylon 5's episode was this. The blocking was the same. The cave had torches, And as things were running out, the torches were getting dimmer, and John Sheridan would say, "It's getting darker, I can't see you anymore." And the entity that was helping him out said, "As it should be." The blocking with the guide mentor being on the left side of the screen and Sheridan being on the right side of the screen, the lack of any real music, all you heard was the fire cracking. This was such stolen material from Babylon 5, this scene. And much like the one a couple of episodes ago where they stole from Stargate Atlantis and TNG, this really bothers me because I've seen people online praising this scene as, "Oh my gosh, this was a really well done scene." Yeah, it was in the 90s when Babylon 5 did it.
I would like to point out that there is one very, very large distinction between these two scenes. Even though both of them were afraid of letting people down, their reasoning behind that was very different. For instance, Sheridan didn't want to let people down because, as he said, billions will die. So huge difference there, because Michael Burnham didn't want to let people down because she was afraid of their opinion of her being diminished. So for her, it was a completely selfish thing. And for John Sheridan, it was the opposite. It was selfless. So there's a huge distinction there between how the two scenes were written. Same scene, different motivation for the characters. One, a selfless character, the other one, horribly selfish. So when people praise this scene, I wish they would go back and watch the Babylon 5 scene, or even just think about the things that Michael Burnham is saying. Because it's ridiculous that the progenitor's tech should be trusted to her because she has all this introspection, yet the biggest mistake she ever made, which was disobeying orders, landing on that artifact, killing that torchbearer, and kicking off a war that killed so many people, that didn't even come up in this, like, at all. It was all about her, all about feeling like people respect the fact that she has this title and wears this uniform. She doesn't want to let Book down in their relationship, which goes back to when she and that Klingon in an Edgar suit were making out while the war is going on and talking about how sometimes the needs of the one has to trump the needs of the many. I mean, it was really gross. She's a gross character, and she still hasn't taken responsibility for that. And the reason is because the writers won't let her. There is no sympathy for this character because she doesn't deserve it. There was no real introspection there. This was just garbage.
And in the Babylon 5 episode, and this was an ongoing theme throughout the series, but in that scene, well, actually there were a few scenes where he was in the cave. It was basically that whole episode. There was an A and a B story. The concept of answering the question, who are you? And that was what this was dealing with, was the mentor in that cave helping Sheridan was trying to get John Sheridan to understand who are you can't be defined by other people. You have to have your own reasons for who you are. Do you have anything worth living for yourself, not other people, just you? And that was a much, much deeper question than what Michael Burnham was answering.
Well, especially since you ask her that question, and instead of worrying about whether or not other people think she deserves to be in that uniform, or that she might let them down and their opinion of her may drop, it should have been more along the lines of atoning for her past sins, her real sins, not her phony baloney sins like they talked about in this episode. It was all about other people's opinion of her. And that's very disturbing that they think that that is what a good character is, someone who should be entrusted with guarding the progenitor's technology. Really, like, that's the last person I would put in charge of that, is her.
So as I said, the episode of Babylon 5 I'm referencing, it got tons of spoilers. The series of Babylon 5 is a very arc-driven series, and we're talking season 4 here. So I kept it vague on purpose. But if you don't want to worry about watching Babylon 5 and getting spoiled, if you look at season 4, episode 2, Whatever Happened to Mr. Garibaldi, there's an A and a B story. The one story you want of that episode is the one where you have the cave and you have Sheridan and this entity. And if you don't mind spoilers, if you watch that and then you go back and you watch like the latter 20 minutes when Discovery was having Michael Burnham talk to Book. Because remember, Michael Burnham, when she was going through the labyrinth and she had that sand, and then she came through that door and she thought she solved it, but she went into a big circle and ended up where she began. Again, Babylon 5, except they gave you that extra line, a couple of lines, of Sheridan saying, well, we're back where we began, and the mentor character said, yeah, most of us do. There was actual philosophy there where Michael Burnham just came back to that room and there was no lines given as far as, oh, you're back where you started. There was nothing deeper there. And I'm getting tired of this series stealing from other stuff. You know, we had that Stargate Atlantis and TNG episode, what was it, Whistle Speak, a couple of episodes ago. And we made a compilation video, a clip video, of going between those three properties, TNG, Stargate Atlantis, and Discovery, and showing how a good part of the episode was stolen from that. After presenting those clips, I think we made our case that this isn't common tropey or I'm looking at things that don't actually exist. I mean, there were enough specific things in Whistle Speak for that one part of the story to say, nah, they got that from TNG and Stargate Atlantis. Well, that scene with Michael Burnham and Fake Book at the end, you know, when the lights were going off, not the rest of the episode, but when the lights were going off and there was revelations going on with Michael Burnham, that was taken from Babylon 5. That was stolen from Babylon 5. That wasn't common tropey. I'm getting sick of this franchise stealing stuff. Again, is this AI? I don't know. The other stuff with the library and the Breen, I could try to figure out some similar pieces, but honestly, there wasn't enough there that I could say, oh, they definitely stole from this, this, and this. It was generic enough where I could say, you know, that's common tropey. Let's not worry about it. But this stuff at the end with the Babylon 5 scene, this is stolen. I mean, this is not common tropey. This is lining up almost exactly, including the blocking in the scene. What the heck are they doing? Do they think people don't watch this stuff? Or when the AI spits out the story, they're just not aware of these other franchises, so they're like, okay.
Well, I think that's it.
Let's just knit it together. It's not that I'm recognizing this is from Babylon 5 or this is from Stargate Atlantis. The AI said, let's do this, so let's do it. Let's knit it together with some storylines and done.
I think that's exactly what happened.
Was there an episode this season that wasn't having some pieces of it stolen from something else? This is what, episode 8? And this is getting ridiculous at this point. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go into a long speech here. I'm just going to say, because we had a longer video about this. If people are okay with plagiarism, then you have fun. But I would like to have some original material that if you're deriving from stuff, at least I can't figure out where you got it from. So I'm not okay with this stealing stuff. But, you know, it doesn't matter. People online, I've heard, are praising that scene that was stolen. They were praising Whistle Speak that was stolen from TNG and Stargate Atlantis. Do these people not watch anything but Discovery? Like, they're not even familiar with TNG. They're not familiar with Stargate Atlantis. They're not familiar with Babylon 5.
Correct.
So they're watching this knockoff presentation, and they don't care. It's like, if somebody points out it's stolen, they're like, so? And I'll just leave it at that. We had a longer conversation about plagiarism. I'm not going to get into that. It's more of just, I think a person has to decide with their own value system whether plagiarism is something you're okay with or not. Molly and I are not okay with plagiarism. Maybe it's an older thing and the younger generation doesn't care. Don't know. At this point, don't care. I'm just sick of watching this crap. I think there's 10 episodes total this season, so we only have 2 more episodes of this crap. I will not be sorry to see this series go away. Thieving writers.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say about this. All things considered, yeah, a lot of stolen material. Michael Burnham is still a terrible character. Clearly, the writing really is insipid. However, the only thing I will give it is that, I hate to say this, but it was actually better than what Russell Davies has given us in Doctor Who so far with his new Disney Who series. Because at least this, because it was mostly stolen, I think, made sense as far as...
I don't know if it was mostly stolen, but the good part at the end, that was stolen.
At least with this, the continuity throughout this episode was intact. There weren't any major holes in this other than characters acting stupid or just being jerks. So at least it was followable. So I'll give it that. But otherwise, yeah. You know what? Write better. Just write better. How about write original stuff? And if you have writers on staff, and I'm talking to you, Alex Kurtzman and Michelle Paradise, if you're not up to the task, then quit. Hire somebody who is. Hire people who actually have the life experience to be able to write real emotions with real depth. Because this was just shallow, narcissistic crap. So that's my 2 cents on that. Anything else, old man?
Nope.
All right, well, you know what to do, everyone. Comments below, and we'll talk this out. Till next week.
Take care.